Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the episode 3, week 4. What are we on? Week 5 podcast? Week 6 podcast for the Eau Claire Fantasy Football League. I am Jack Filipiak, your commissioner, 2-time Eau Claire League Fantasy Football champion, joined in the car today by Nick Pierce and Thomas Wilkin. Guys, how are we doing this morning?
Fantastic. On our way to Diamond Joe's to make some money. Can't ask for a better morning.
It's my first time headed down to Diamond Joe's for the year. Excited for that. Excited to be a member of the podcast.
I like it. On our way to Diamond Joe's. It is a work day for Thomas, Jack, and Nick today. Guys, I'm not going to lie. This is the second filming of the third episode of the podcast. We had a technical difficulty on Thursday after an hour and 44-minute podcast with Chad and Nick. Technical malfunctions held us from getting that podcast out, unable to record, unable to save. So we're going to try it again here in the car. A little choppier than Thursday, but here we go. I'm going to lead us off with some week 2 or podcast 2 blunders, podcast 2 good calls. The blunders for me, calling first trade with Pierce Bucks. That notion makes 2 trades last week. We'll get into the specifics in a little bit here. Other than that whole podcast was nonsense. The D-Boys don't really watch football. They don't provide much value outside of some few jokes, a couple stories. So not a lot of blunders. Some good calls. Dion Lewis being outside the D-Boys' top 4 scorers. He was, I think, a 3-point fantasy football scorer in that week, and I beat the D-Boys heads up. Also, one more water bet on the board. That is that Dion Lewis finishes as top 30 fantasy football running back. That looks like an immortal lock. And then the D-Boys made yet another water bet with my brother on who would have a better record by the end of the year. Why they did that, I have no idea. They're 0-5. Looks like the D-Boys getting wet at the draft next year. Guys, I want to jump into a little bit of the message boards. What do you guys think of the message boards this week?
So I remember my post about the rules. I guess that's the only one I remember. What was the other one?
Yeah, we had a long post from Thomas about the rules recap. Thank you, Thomas. I'm going to do a quick recap of that on the podcast as well. We also had a Mike Offner sighting. We had a Jared Saul sighting. And then we had a league vote on is Chad really to blame. I'll do a quick recap. I'll get you guys' thoughts afterwards. So, Tom, you posted the rules. Thank you. Commish posts are going to be addressed through the podcast like this. So, like, this would be Nick's week for the post. Everybody will get invited onto the podcast at some point. So we're going to do the commish post handled that way. Yes, 7 teams make the playoffs. Yes, the 7th seed is the highest points that is not in the playoffs already. The IR spot can't be added at this point. Too late. Consolation pool will be discussed. We're going to have some money in the consolation pool this year, guys. But we'll discuss that when the consolation pool is determined. And the last one is the highest seed gets to pick their playoff opponent, meaning the number 1 seed will have a bye week 1. The number 2 seed will get to pick between any of the remaining teams and who they play, so on and so forth. The other post is from Offner. Offner listened to the podcast. I was surprised. He a little feisty when I called him out on his activity. I did go back. I checked the record. A rare apology from the commissioner. Mike Offner is middle of the road for his posts. Way to go, Mike. Sorry for calling you out. Last one, Jared Saul. He is not a regular poster, but it sounds like he listened to the podcast, guys. Pretty excited. He offered up a Chiefs trade. He took no offers from anybody. And last, it looks like, Chad, you're still on the hook for ruining Draft Day 2020. We're going to have you back in the studio at some point to defend yourself. Guys, any hot takes from those message boards?
I'm just glad you summed up the rules because I was getting really nervous that we weren't going to do what we discussed. So thank you.
You're welcome, Tom.
I like the activity on the message boards. I also like that we have multiple avenues to communicate this year. The text message thread, the podcast. I think we're really stepping up our game to make sure everyone gets involved.
And I voted on the poll. It didn't look like there were a lot of votes out there. It's voting season. People should go out and vote.
Go out and vote. Check the polls. We're going to have a new poll up this week. Get out there and vote. So where are we now? We're, God, I'm going to say it wrong again. We're 5 weeks in. We got week 6 today. Alex Maine remains the only undefeated team. He beats up on the commissioner. I fall to 2-3. Pierce Second place, the only 4-1 team. So Mano and Pierce have a clear lead over kind of the rest of the pack. There's a ton of teams at 3-2 and 2-3. It seems like that's always how this league goes, doesn't it, guys? Always a cluster in the middle.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is always a cluster in the middle, which makes this league really fun because I feel like we always have a chance throughout the season, even if you feel like your team's underperforming a little bit.
Yeah, with 14 guys, it really, to be one of those top tier teams, it takes a lot, and then it does end up being a lot of middle of the road. It's a fun year. I'm really enjoying it this year, being up on the top, looking down, but we'll see how the rest of the season plays out.
Not so humble brag from Pierce. Tom, I noticed you said this league always has teams in the middle. You find yourself on the bottom end of the sandwich here. You are not the peanut butter and jelly. You are the bottom slice.
I think it depends how you look at it.
You're 1-4, Tom. What do you mean?
I'm 1-4, but I believe I'm fourth in points. I might be off, I might be fifth, but I'm definitely near the top. Definitely in the playoff hunt for that points final spot. Not really hitting the panic button right now. My depth's coming alive. I have Alexander Madison, which I think will be a nice boost to my weak running back core. I also have Le'Veon Bell, who's a Chief now. We'll see how that plays out. So I have a lot of optimism right now.
Tom also has a defense who put up 29 points and tight end who had 3 touchdowns 1 week.
Well, you know what? If you hate it so much, get rid of the kickers and defenses. Yes, my kicker and defense.
Tom, we don't hate it. We don't hate it. It was just luck. You just got a little lucky. That's all.
We're
Just
5 weeks in. When you look at that over the course of the full season, your points for may not look so great.
Just
All right.
embrace the luck. You're a lucky owner. You're 1-4. But Tom, all jokes aside, you bring up a great point. That's going to be a perfect segue for me. Tom is at 1-4, and he's right. He's not out of the playoff hunt by any means. As a matter of fact, I don't think the D-boys are out of it either, guys. And hear me out on this. Hear me out on this. I want to give everybody a little bit of hope. Are the D-boys a long shot? They are. Are they out of it? No, they're not. They're not out of it, and here's why. Chad is currently the high points not in the playoffs. Right now, he's the 8th team, but he has more points than Jared Saul with 536 points. It would bump Jared out of his playoff spot now. The D-boys have 460 points, which is 76 points out of the running for the playoffs. 76 points it's no easy task to make that up, but it's doable if you chip away. If the D-boys can average over 100 points the rest of the way, I think they got a real shot to get in the playoffs. Now, I don't think that team's capable of doing it right now, but you never know. There is hope. There is some light at the end of the proverbial tunnel. The only owner who might be out of it, guys, is Schmeich, who won't set a full lineup. I don't know what the fuck the kid's doing. It takes 30 seconds to log into the fantasy app and put in a defense and a kicker. I hope he doesn't do it this week because he plays me. So hopefully this podcast does not air before noon. But guys, what do you think? Is it key to remember in this league that your points for matter a lot?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't even, to be completely honest, I don't even really care if I win or lose. I care about just putting up a lot of points. I feel like the wins kind of even out, or your points kind of match your wins by the end of the year. You might have some bad luck here and there, but you're also going to win weeks where you don't score a lot. So right now at this point in the season, I just worry about scoring points, putting myself in a good situation points-wise, and then I hope the wins just kind of come along with it.
Points are the great equalizer, and I think it's a great thing. It keeps everyone involved and makes sure everyone does set that lineup so no one gets that unfair advantage if someone is not paying attention.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like the points for rule ad. It does make the league more interesting if you get robbed out of some wins. I've seen situations where high points is like second or third to last some years in record. You can just get robbed that way. So go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to say, did you ever hear the story of how this whole thing came up?
No, let's hear it.
So I lived with Jared Saul back in like 2014. He played in some random like fantasy league on a website that I'd never heard of, and that's how they did it. He told me about it, and I loved it. And then I suggested that in my high school league. They liked it. It worked out well, and then I suggested it in this league. I think it's an awesome rule.
Yeah, great way to do it. Great way to do it. It brings in kind of a sense of it, like we've talked about, touching a few times. If you have a good team and you score points, you're going to make it into the playoffs. I think that your record matters less. I would be interested to see if the league vote potentially next year and years future. We maybe do top five teams by record and top 2 points for. I do know one of my good friends plays in a league where it's all play, so you literally play everybody every week, and it's basically points for is your record. I think that's an interesting concept as well. Have you guys ever heard of that? You ever heard of the all play method?
So if you're like second highest, you get like 1 loss.
Exactly.
Okay.
You might be 12-1 or 13-1 or 12-1 for a week.
I kind of like that.
Yeah.
That part of it, it's an interesting concept. However, I think that does take away of some of that watching your matchup specifically. So I do like the head-to-head still with the buffer to make sure that real high-scoring teams don't get screwed.
Yeah, it's a good point, Nick. The head-to-head is fun, especially when you're playing one of your arch rivals. I do agree with you there. It does take away that fun piece. Tom, I have a question for you. At 1-4, you said you don't really care about the record as much. You just want to score points. I get that. As a team who's at 1-4, where you pretty much your only shot to make it is by scoring points, how does that affect how you set your lineup? Are you more likely to play a high ceiling, low floor guy, a boom bust guy? Or are you sticking to your guys? Is it too early to panic?
I think I'm definitely leaning towards picking the high ceiling guys to play. But I also think that just kind of that differs depending on just the matchups and how I'm feeling that week. It really just depends. But like Chenault's a guy I love to play. He could very well put up 2 points, or he could put up 15, 16, 17. So he's a more attractive option than someone like Julian Edelman. I'll put it like that. He's going to be very consistently like 9, 10 points every week.
Sure. Nick, what do you think? If you got yourself in a hole, you dug yourself a little bit of a hole, would you be more apt to play a high ceiling guy, like maybe let's say like a Hollywood Brown, or would you stick with like Thompson, maybe a Julian Edelman or somebody who's more consistent?
I think you have to go for the high ceiling guys. At that point, you're not panicking, but you only have a few options left. That's your only chance. So I think it's a no-brainer. Play the guys who could put up the most points.
Yeah, I agree, Nick. I think maybe week 5, maybe a little early to hit like a big panic button. But as we progress through the season, if you're within 40, 50, 60 points of getting that high point playoff spot, make a mental note. Maybe put in a guy who has a shot to take an 80-yard touchdown to the house versus a guy who's going to get you 7 points. You have to make the points up somehow. So make a mental note. If you're one of those teams maybe falling towards the bottom in your record, take a look at the lineup. Maybe start some guys a little bit higher ceiling, try and make the points push. Guys, we had some big NFL news. I want to get your guys' take on this. Le'Veon Bell was released by the Jets. Some disgruntlings, I don't even know what my word is. I was surprised by it. It seems like Gase and Bell never got along. He was released, signed by the Chiefs, in kind of a surprise move this week. What's your guys' take on that?
I think it's Le'Veon Bell. If I'm him, why not give yourself a shot at the Super Bowl? You made the money. You signed a big contract. The thing everyone wants is that Super Bowl. Makes the Chiefs that much more powerful. Fantasy-wise, I don't know if it matters as much. They have so many weapons. You never know who's going to score. Kelsey's and Tyreek are kind of your go-tos. But definitely will be interesting for the next upcoming weeks.
Yeah, I mean, being the Bell owner in the league, that move gives me more hope of him performing better as a Chief than probably a Jet. But I am really curious to see what the snap count distribution will be between him and Clyde, because Clyde's not just going to go away, either. So I'm hoping it's, Bell is playing 50% of the snaps. I think that's probably best case scenario.
Yeah, Tom, I agree. I think 50% is best case for Bell. I think I'm going to throw this week out. I don't expect Bell to really play at all this week. Is he active, guys?
He cannot. So there's a rule, I believe, in the NFL where if you're traded, you have to wait 5 days.
Okay, 5 days. And it was late enough in the week where that didn't clear.
Yeah, so what's interesting about that, I could be wrong here, but I think if he would have signed a day earlier, them being the Monday night game, I think he could have had a chance to be active. Not certain on that, but I just found that kind of interesting.
That is interesting, Tom. I did not know that. So maybe he was one day away from being able to play this week. I don't think it really matters. I don't think he was going to play much this week anyway. I think next week, though, you take a hard look because he'll have been with the team for almost 2 weeks. If his snap count's below like a third of the snaps, or if Daryl Williams is still playing, I think Le'Veon Bell might just be cooked. Might be a depth piece at that point. So we'll see where he is in 2 weeks, see what Lev Bell has got left in the tank. Nick, I want to get to the big news in fantasy football this week. 2, not 1, but 2 blockbuster trades were made. Everybody talked about it, Nick. Everybody said he won't do it. He's too much of a coward. He loves his guys. You buck the trend. You make your first trade with Alex Main, who's known to get run through the trade ringer. You trade James Robinson, running back, Jacksonville Jaguars, David Montgomery from the Bears for Josh Jacobs and Frank Gore. What were your thoughts making the trade?
I had a lot of depth. That's been, with this year, the injury is a good thing. Now, 4-1, I'm starting to try to make that push for the playoffs and get that playoff lineup set. So the way I see it is I got, a top 10 running back who is going to look real good in the playoff lineup, and that was my move. Mano did mention Jacobs was on a kind of his urgency to make the trade. So I think I took advantage of, being able to ride it out 1 week with Jacobs on the bye, but it'll benefit my team the rest of the way.
Yeah, Nick, good analysis. Interesting to hear that you actually root for injuries. You always hate to see them, but it seems like Nick Pierce loves injuries this year. Hot take from Nick Pierce. Tom, what did you think of the trade? What was you're known as a trade guru in this league. Break it down for us.
Yeah,
Talk into the mic, please.
Putting myself in Pierce's shoes, I think he picked the right teams to trade with this week. I called Pierce. I called his trades it was art. It was pure art what he did this week.
Art.
And I thought the Jacobs move was great. I'm personally not a big fan of Montgomery. I think he'll kind of fizzle out. I think Jacobs only gets better in the second half of the season. Props to Pierce. I thought that both trades he did were definitely great trades for him. Already was the roster to fear in the league, in my opinion, and that roster has only gotten better now.
Yeah, Tom, it's hard to disagree. I do think, like we touched on, Maine makes a trade. He moves Jacobs, who's on bye this week. He lost Chubb to the IR. He brings in a guy, James Robinson, who I actually really like. Robinson very involved in the pass game, so whether the Jaguars are up or down, he's going to be touching the ball. And Montgomery let's be honest, he's a flex guy. He's getting touches. He's not a guy I'd mind on my roster, but yeah, you're right. He's nothing sexy. He's not going to go get you 25 points. But he is involved in the offense. He's a solid running back. Should be a good starter for Maine. So Maine makes the right move, in my opinion. He gets a couple more running backs. But it does hurt losing to Josh Jacobs. The second trade, the D-boys, after all the shit they were talking to Pierce, they make a trade with Pierce. They move on from Dalvin Cook. Pierce gives up, it seems like, half of his roster. Pierce, walk me through the trade. Who'd you give up?
So, first of all, I gave up Frank Gore, who came over on a trade from Maine. Not really a roster piece. Maine was going to drop him, and I said, might as well throw him over, and I can decide what to do with him.
Frank Gore passed around like the village whore. Who else was in the trade?
Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks has done nothing all year. Had a great week last week, and I figured now was my time to try to take advantage of his value, his perceived value from that one high-scoring week. Not a lot of consistency with him, so it'd be tough to have him in my lineup every week, so why not move him?
Yep.
The last piece is Jonathan Taylor. I was high on him to start the year. He has a lot of touchdowns, but just not getting as many carries as I like, and the yard per carry not super efficient. So I was ready to move on from him for a big piece like Dalvin Cook, who I think will come off the injury in 2 weeks and be good to go.
Very interesting. So Jonathan Taylor, I haven't had a chance to look at it. His yards per carry low. Do you know a chance roughly where they're at?
I believe Tom was throwing me under the bus the other week. Under 3 yards per carry, right around 3 yards per carry.
Right around 3 yards per carry. Yeah, highly inefficient behind one of the best old lines. Interesting you bring up Jonathan Taylor's yards per carry when you trade for a guy in Josh Jacobs whose yards per carry is 3.6.
Yep. I also saw.
Seems like flawed logic, Nick.
So here's my viewpoint on that. Jacobs has gone up against a couple tough defenses. He proved last year. He already has played a full year. He was an efficient runner last year. 5 games in, I kind of say the trend, he'll start to get better and better throughout the year. I trust him. He has the history. So he's the guy I want on my team.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Obviously, we can put a little more stock into Jacobs having a full year, seeing him, Jonathan Taylor being a rookie from the Badgers, who's known for notoriously pumping out not NFL-ready running backs. I don't disagree, Nick. I don't disagree. The D-boys in this trade, like you said, you're trading pieces that are on your bench. You're not really ever going to start them. For the D-boys, let's be honest, this is 3 starters. Their team is near the dumpster fire area. Frank Gore in the flex for them this week. They bring Brandon Cooks, who's an upgrade from Deebo Samuel, who I think you got in the trade. And then Jonathan Taylor, maybe he pans out. He's on a good O-line. He's got a good defense. They should be in plus matchups. So we'll see. We'll see. They get rid of Dalvin Cook, who's out this week on bye next week. I think it's a move the D-boys probably have to make at this point in the season where they're at. If they fall further behind in points, it's going to be really hard for them to catch up with their roster. Tom, any other thoughts on this trade specifically?
The way I'll put it is, if you look at that trade, in my opinion, with no context, don't know standings, don't know records, don't know rosters, I think it's lopsided. I value Dalvin Cook. He's definitely just a true workhorse, top 5 running back, like a guy I definitely want on my team in the playoff stretch. Whereas, I agree about Jonathan Taylor. It's not that I don't think he's good. I think his perceived value is higher than what I think it should be right now. And I mean, he does his stats are getting a little bit better every week, but he's just not that true RB1 yet that I think a lot of people think he will be or is even. So I really like the trade for Nick, but yeah, I mean the D-boys, they had one basically tradable guy on their team, and they're gasping for air right now. And so to move one, even if it's a superstar, to get 3 pieces to plug into their starting lineup, it's a move that you just have to make, and I probably would have made the same move in their shoes.
Yeah, interesting trade. I don't disagree, Tom. I do think Pierce probably comes out ahead if Dalvin Cook stays healthy and plays. I'm a little concerned with Dalvin Cook's health. I know he's going to get 2 weeks off, but he's been known to be a guy who gets dinged up. They have a more than serviceable backup with Alexander Mattison. I think when Dalvin Cook comes back, I think they monitor his snaps a little closer, especially if the Vikings start winning football games and they have a shot to play football in the playoffs this year. Guys, you're both high on Cook. I'd love to make a bet with either one of you. More fantasy points the rest of the season. I get Jonathan Taylor plus 15 against Dalvin Cook. Will either of you take it? Stand by your Dalvin Cook takes.
I'm all over it. If this is a water bet, absolutely I'm in.
Water bet it is. Pierce is taking the action. Thomas, are you going to take the action or are you going to cower away?
I'll go down with my fellow Vikings fan.
Okay, water bet, gentlemen. Water bet on the podcast. We've got fantasy points rest of the season starting this week. Jonathan Taylor versus Dalvin Cook. I get plus 15. We'll see where it ends up. I think I'm basically betting that Dalvin Cook sits out 2 or 3 games to make up those points, and Taylor's got to play for me to win. I don't think Taylor's going to beat him on a per-game basis. I just think there's question marks with Cook's health. That being said, great trades, Nick. Great trades rest of the league. Way to be active league. I think everybody's team gets a little bit better, but we'll see how it pans out the rest of the season. Nick, I want to cut to the chase. Last podcast, you were accused of using your real estate powers under the hashtag TCHomeGuy to influence league owner's brother, Clayton Truller, into trading with the D-boys. It was rumored that you were maybe shaving some dollars off of the realtor fees, maybe offering up free cabin stays. What do you have to say about this?
There's no dollar shaving. There's no cabin stays. What I do have to say is Clayton kind of mixed up the guys that I was using as comparisons. So when I was talking about the trash and the house you didn't want, we were in a house that felt like it was going to fall over. You didn't want anything to do with that. I told them, Deion Lewis, this is kind of like Deion Lewis. You don't want anything to do with this. They're asking way too much money. At some point, got lost in translation, and Clayton went back to Travis and Mark, and they decided to throw $75 on Deion Lewis. So I think they just flip-flopped some names, and that was the big misunderstanding. But I always try to make the real estate process as easy as possible. Like Clayton said, I was making a football reference. He just flipped the guys. I don't know. He got confused, and that's all there is to it.
Clayton's palms may be a little sweaty. First-time home buyer. Congratulations to Clayton Triller. Congratulations to Nick Pierce. Okay, and interesting. Maybe a little piece of mental inception. Pierce plants the idea of Deion Lewis, and the D-boys go attack it. Maybe some genius by Pierce. You heard it here. Nick Pierce claims no dollar shavings, no free cabin stays. He's a man of integrity. Tom, what side of the story do you believe?
I'm going to go with Clayton here. He has no reason to lie, no upside by lying, so I got to believe Clayton.
Wow, so you still go against Nick Pierce. Interesting. I think Nick has started to sway me. Nick, what do you think about Tom still siding with the D-boys?
I think Tom likes a good argument. Tom is in the car with me now. I think you get him with the D-boys in the car, and he may sway his opinion the other way. So Tom's always up for a good debate. I think that's all there is to it. He knows deep in his heart I wouldn't do something like that.
Tom?
No comment.
No comment. Tom is fuming right now. His fists are clenched in the car. Guys, I don't want to fight here. I don't want to fight. Nick Pierce is our driver. Tom looks like he's going to rear back and cold cock him one. Maybe it's because Pierce is 4-1 and Tom finds himself in the basement at 1-4. Maybe some jealousy from Project Top 13, who is living up to his namesake as the 13th team. Okay, Nick, I tend to side with you, and you know why? You know why I side with you? It's not because your kind of lame argument that Clayton is confused. It's because the D-boys, they made a lot of claims last week. A lot of claims, and the one that brought my heart full was the A.J. Green no matter what story. A.J. Green no matter what. Guys, if you didn't listen to the podcast last week, give it a listen. You'll know what I'm talking about. Thomas, help me out. Where is A.J. Green now?
Well, I have no idea. I mean, I think he's still on waivers or free agency. But when I saw that trade go through and I saw that the droppable player was A.J. Green, I just shook my head because, they were so passionate about having A.J. Green on their team. And then they dropped him like not even a week after their heartful story.
Exactly, Tom. Nick, what'd you think of that? Did you see that move?
I did see that move. It's par for the course with those boys. They say one thing and deep down they're doing something else. You never trust them. I think if they had spent a little more time researching their pickups and their draft this year, maybe they would have been better off. Instead, they were making up some stories and makes for good content, but doesn't help the fantasy team.
Yeah, Nick, I agree. You make a story like that, and now I wonder, was it made up? Was there even a Post-it note? A.J. Green is cut from the gruesome twosome. It's disrespectful. The team's 0-5. It's not like they're going anywhere. They can at least keep the veteran leadership around. They also said they're going to keep Saquon Barkley. It's Mark Gras big boy golf clubs. He's full of shit. I don't buy anything the D-boys say anymore. Literally, they contradict themselves less than a week after the podcast airs. Guys, you're out. You're out. I mean, you can't just do that. You can't come on the pod, make all these big claims, make all these big stories. Nobody believes your shit anymore. It's all lies. There's no Post-it note. There was no big boy golf clubs. Saquon gone. A.J. Green gone. Delvin Cook gone. That team is unrecognizable. The D-boys are two of the worst owners in the league. Guys, I'm out. You made a lot of moves this week that really frayed me. I'm back with Pierce on this one. Let's move on. Nick, I've asked this question to everybody, so I'm curious to hear your take. Draft Day 2020 was an interesting one. Give me for you, what was the Draft Day 2020 highlight, maybe a Draft Day 2020 low light?
The highlight was getting everyone back together. We had some panic. We had some guys getting ready to bail, and I was making sure to talk to Jack and say, we got to keep this together. The live draft, that's one of the best parts of fantasy every year, getting everyone together. So I was proud of most of the league for getting out there, making it happen, and that's my highlight, was just doing the draft like we always do. Low light for me, you got a couple of the guys not show up, a little scared of the big city. I was a little disappointed in that. the other low light for me was I was scrambling around like a chicken with his head cut off, trying to mow the lawn, make sure Rachel wasn't mad at me for having 14 guys over last minute. So she made sure to crack the whip before the party happened. But overall, great night. I'm glad we got it done.
Yeah, absolutely. And a special thanks again to Nick Pierce for being open to the late pivot and hosting draft day. The Richfield Riots, thankfully, were not on Pierce's block. The boys from the Burbs didn't make it in. We had some technical difficulties, a late start. Nick Pierce, thank you again. Nick Filipiak, Mike Offner. Next year, you better be there, boys. Next year, you better be there. There are no Minong Riots, I promise. I promise there's no Minong Riots. Draft is going to be at the cabin next year. Tom, what did you think of our host, Nick Pierce, being so open to the late pivot for draft day 2020?
Yeah, I mean, he saved us. I didn't know we were drafting that night. It just turned into chaos. We had people in the chat already saying, like, no, let's just reschedule it. And I'm thinking, oh, man, it's already hard enough to get 14 people together, some, in different states or just people who aren't going to be there. So I'm really surprised it worked out as well as it did. I know you probably, in your eyes, you probably don't view it that it went well because there was a lot of stress and extra stuff to deal with last minute. But simply put, I'm just surprised we got it done.
Yeah. No, I would not say the draft went well. You're 100% right. Very stressful, but all I care about is the happiness of my league owners. So even though I had to deal with the elder statesman not showing up, trying to get, I thought I was pretty good with technology. Turns out I'm terrible. Couldn't figure that out. Then I have to draft the Wingdom Warriors team for him. The only text I got from Jared Saul about his team was draft Chiefs. I went out and accomplished that, but it was interesting bidding against myself on players I like Travis Kelce and Hollywood Brown. Thankfully, I didn't get Hollywood Brown. He's been a disappointment. But yeah, draft day, hey, we had it. Nick, the D-Boys brought up something about draft day that really stood out to them. It's Matt Porwell's tiny chair. Do you remember that thing?
I do remember. Never seen anything like that in my life. Just an interesting chair to sit in. I don't know. It didn't look very comfortable to me. But that's kind of Matt. You find something quirky that's going to get attention, and he likes that.
You hit the nail on the head, Nick. That's literally verbatim what I was going to say. I think Matt Porwell brought the tiny chair because he wanted somebody to be like, oh, hey, Matt, where'd you get that tiny chair? And then he launches into a 20-minute story about like, oh, this is the best chair at Gander Mountain. I took it up to the North Shore. It was great. I had a campfire. It's like the best chair. And he was like collapsing it and refolding it over and over. I think Matt likes that. He wants to tell that story. Tom, what'd you think of Tiny Chairgate 2020?
Yeah, it's funny because I definitely remember it. And then when the Gruesome Twosome brought it up, then I just found it extra funny. So it was like, oh yeah, that's right. He did have that tiny chair. It looked kind of weird, but nobody said anything. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I bet you he brings that thing to the camping or wherever he goes and puts it by a campfire and loves it. So.
Oh, yeah. I like that. I did forget about that last week. And you know who else I want to give a special shout out to? There's two people actually for the draft that I want to give a shout out to. One is Jake Walzak. All of his close friends bail on the draft. Wally still shows up. Wally, underrated member of this league, only his second year in. Thank you to Wally for showing up when his friends refused to come. And another thank you to Clayton Truller for auctioneering our draft that day. He also didn't bail. He could have easily bailed on the draft. So I wanted to, on the podcast, thank those two. Thank you, Clayton, for being our auctioneer. We appreciate you showing up. I think you even stopped to pick us up batteries on the way. So thank you very much for doing that. Thank you, Jake Walzak, for showing up. Look forward to the draft being back to some normalcy next year. All right, Tom. All right, Nick. I want to move away from the draft. I want to move to the 2020 NFL season. What's your biggest surprise so far, not fantasy related, but just NFL related for the 2020 season? It could be a team, it could be a player. What's your biggest surprise, Nick? Lead us off.
You look at just the big name players going down this year. It feels like every week someone new. The thing I notice is every year the players talk about we can't have more preseason games. We don't want those preseason games. It's just a chance for people to get injured. Now you look at a quarter of the way through the season and there's more injuries than ever. I wonder if those preseason games are a way where players get used to playing a part of the game, kind of work into a full game, and actually is a benefit to them.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't disagree. I wish we had more of a sample size of preseason not happening to know if there's any facts behind that or not. But yeah, it's a good take. Maybe preseason does keep people healthier. Tom, before you give your answer, weigh in on that. What do you think about that? You think there's some logic behind that?
Yeah, I mean, I basically agree with what Nick said. I just don't know if the NFL can add more games. Like, I think they're already at their limit. It's already a super long season. I think they just need to keep it as it is, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, me too. As much as I love NFL football, as much as I would love an extra week of fun, I do think the injuries. Tom, what's your biggest surprise so far 2020 NFL season?
I always like the non-fantasy related stuff, so I'm just gonna say the NFC East in general. The fact that it's just a cluster of records and it's still anyone's division right now. Like the Eagles are a little bit worse than everyone thought. Dallas, even with Dak, were worse than people thought. And if I think we're going to have an Alex Smith story here in the second half of the season. I think he finds a way to get that job, and I think it'd just be awesome if he ended up playing like pretty well and kept Washington alive. So.
Yeah, Tom, NFC East, what a dumpster fire. Do you think the team that wins that division has a winning record?
That's a good question. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say 7-9 probably.
Yeah, I think so too. I think 7-9. I love the Alex Smith talk. I love it. I would also really enjoy an Alex Smith story. I think there's about a 0% chance it happens. He got absolutely smoked by the Rams in the few snaps that he played in that game. Aaron Donald, he was like giving Donald a piggyback ride. I thought he was going to get re-injured. I'm worried about Alex. It's a great story, but that O-line is so bad. I don't want him to sit back there and take hits if he's not 100% healthy. But I would also love to see the story. Nick, what do you think? NFC East is a shocker to you?
It is a shocker. I thought the Cowboys, they were, with that offense, I thought they were going to win a lot of games. I also agree with Tom. I think the winner comes out with a losing record. At this point, they all have, I think, at least 4 losses. So it's just, man, I wish my Vikes were in the NFC East to be right in the running.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? What a joke of a division. NFC East, I hope that the Packers make the playoffs and get to play whoever that team is first. We'll see. I agree with you guys. I think 7-9 is probably best case for them. I think whoever wins that division probably gets 3 or 4 division wins. That's how they do it. So we'll see. Good call, the NFC East. I think my biggest surprise for the so far 2020 NFL season is they actually let Russ cook so far. Mr. Unlimited Russ looking phenomenal. I thought Pete Carroll was full of shit. I thought they were going to sit and run the ball all year again like they always have. We'll see if later in the year if they move back to their constant run philosophy. But it's been fun watching Russ actually throw the ball.
If anyone's confused on what being a douche or being a bro is, watch the Mr. Unlimited video.
Mr. Unlimited.
That will sum it up for you.
Hashtag be a bro, be a douche. If you don't feel like you're in the bro douche mood, go watch the Mr. Unlimited video, as Tom said. It'll get you in the spirit. Okay, guys, what's your biggest surprise fantasy football related through 5 weeks?
I think it's got to be James Robinson. I picked him up as just kind of maybe just a shot in the dark that he produces, does something. Worked out really well. Was able to trade him, but undrafted rookie, and he's looking like a solid NFL running back.
Yeah, Nick, I agree. That is probably the biggest fantasy surprise for me as well. James Robinson looks to be the real deal on a bad team. He's on a terrible team, and he's still getting it done. Tom, what about you?
Actually, I'm going to say Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think he's like quarterback 7 right now. Last time I checked. A guy who's like literally fighting for his job. I mean, if he has like one bad week, he's probably going to get benched now in favor of Tua. So he's not like, that's just been the story of his career, and I love how he just like that's his story, and like he just runs with it. He always has to play every game like it's last. And I'm just glad to see that he's like putting up big fantasy numbers so far. And I hope he continues, so it just puts this whole Tua scenario in like a really awkward position. I like stories like that.
Yeah, Tom, it's hard not to love Ryan Fitzpatrick. Another guy, if you haven't ever watched any of his post-game interviews, go watch him. He's a pretty entertaining guy, super smart guy. Like Tom said, he's been fighting for his job. It seems like he's one bad game away from losing his job for the last 5 years, and he's still a starter in the NFL. His fantasy production, he's an undervalued runner. He has a couple rushing touchdowns already this season. I think that's where he gets some production. He, like Tom said, he's playing on a bad team, and he's still getting it done. Good call, Tom. I like that. Fitzmagic, hopefully he keeps it going. I would love to see Fitzmagic give the Fins a playoff run. Who knows? I don't see it, but who knows? That would be pretty fun for me. Biggest fantasy surprise for me so far, I don't have a great one. James Robinson was kind of the one that stood out to me. I do really like what DK Metcalf is doing up in Seattle. He's been a shocker to me. I knew he was a talented player, but he is nuts. It seems like he is wide open a lot, and Russ is finding him. If you, I think he had one play where he like celebrated a touchdown on the 1 yard line, fumbled it. If you give him those fantasy points, he's even higher on the year. Give me DK Metcalf to be a top 12 guy in fantasy this year as well. What do you guys think? You think Metcalf's top 12 guy?
Yeah, I do as well. I have him in another league, so I've been watching him closely, and I mean the guy is a monster. He's so big, so strong, just hard to defend.
Yeah, I think he earned a lot of trust from Wilson last week in that Vikings win. He targeted him on the long fourth down, and then also the fourth down, and it was like 15 to keep the game alive. And then he also hit them on the last play of the game to score the game-winning touchdown. So I think he just gained a ton of trust from Russ, and that's only going to help him for the rest of the season.
Yeah, Tom, good call. Good call. It does seem like he has definitely gained Russ's trust. He almost seems like the go-to guy over Lockett, which is crazy because he's been Russ's guy for so long. But Metcalf is getting it done. Look at him keep getting it done this year. If you want to make a trade, I think he's on Weiss's team. I think it's probably Weiss's favorite player of all time right now. I would put even money on Weiss drafting him next year at the fantasy draft. Hopefully we can archive this podcast and listen to this phone call. Okay, guys. Nick, you're 4-1 on the year. You trade for a guy on a bye. You trade for another guy who's out this week and then moves on to a bye. You're clearly not worried about winning now. I don't think you have to be. It seems like to me you're maybe one wide receiver away from having what would be maybe an unbeatable team. Do you think you're going to make another trade before the trade deadline?
I'm always open to making a trade. If it makes my team better, why would I not do it? I have two receivers now, Keenan Allen, Diggs, getting lots of targets. Keenan Allen hasn't scored a lot of touchdowns. I probably could upgrade with him. If there's anyone looking for a good flex running back in Devontae Freeman, here with Keenan Allen, shoot me a text. I'm looking for a top 10 guy.
Yeah, Tom, give me it doesn't have to be necessarily a player on your team, but who do you think would be a fair trade for Devontae Freeman and Keenan Allen if Nick's looking to upgrade receivers? I'm going to put you on the spot. Feel free to take a few seconds, but okay, Nick's going to offer Devontae Freeman and Keenan Allen. Who's a receiver he should get back for that?
Mike Evans. I don't know who owns him, but you should trade him for Mike Evans.
Yeah, I don't think I'd trade Allen for Evans straight up. Tom, give me an unbiased look at this.
Okay, so it's Keenan Allen and
Devontae Freeman.
Devontae Freeman. Okay. I'll say Allen Robinson.
Allen Robinson, I don't think you're far off. For me personally, I'm not a big Allen Robinson guy. I'd probably still take Keenan Allen over Allen Robinson. Nick, who would you be looking for in this?
Yeah, I would say I'm looking for a guy more like a – and I don't want to sound like I think my team's a battle.
Oh, you're good. Keep going.
Over greedy, but I'd be looking for more of a guy like
Calvin Ridley.
Calvin Ridley trying to play. I think he's the top receiver right now, so that may seem asinine. I think he's kind of playing the best he'll play all year. Julio's coming back, so I think his play falls off a little bit. Give me someone like that. I haven't looked around too much, so throw out an offer.
Yeah, Ridley's probably on the high end in my opinion. What I think you could do is potentially offer that trade to Porwall, who has Michael Thomas and Devontae Adams, who have both been dealing with injuries. Maybe you get one of those guys. Maybe Matt's not super optimistic that they both can stay healthy. Maybe you get a Devontae Adams. Would that be a trade you'd do?
That'd be a trade I'd be in for definitely. So.
Tom, if you were Matt, would you make that trade in a vacuum, or is that way too far? Are we going too far with Keenan Allen and Devontae Freeman?
But I believe Corwall has Melvin Gordon. So if he ends up getting cut or this whole DUI thing becomes an issue, I think Matt would need probably a solid RB2, and I think Freeman would probably be a good option for him, and that might end up being a good trade.
Good call, Tom. I forgot that he had Melvin Gordon. Let's see what happens with the Melvin Gordon story. What a moron, right? Side topic. What a fucking idiot. You're playing NFL football. You're making millions of dollars a year. You have probably 100 people in your entourage that could drive you, and you drink and drive. What a fucking idiot, right?
It makes no sense.
What am I missing?
And you see it all the time. It happens every year. There's another NFL player who does it. There's no logic behind it.
Yeah. Sometimes we forget these NFL guys, they're kids. It blows my mind as well. I don't get it. What an idiot. What an idiot. Tom, Melvin Gordon, any takes?
Surprisingly, he looked like he was going to have a solid fantasy season. I think the last 2 weeks he was getting like over 20. I don't have the data in front of me, but it seemed like the volume was there. And I know Lindsey was hurt, but it's just hard to take away touches from guys who are performing really well. And he was the only thing on that offense that is the bright spot. So I thought Gordon was going to have a real under the radar RB1 caliber season. Then he went and fucked it up. So.
One other side note with that is if he was out drinking, I'm curious where he was drinking, if he was being socially distant, all of that. You're in an NFL season where you're seeing the cases start to spike. I just wonder if he was being precautious with that too, or if you're going to see cases continue to spike in the NFL because players are out doing things like that.
Yeah, I didn't think about it that way. What was he, just drinking in his hotel room by himself and wanted to go for a joyride? I don't know. That's a good point, Nick. I didn't think about that. I wonder what the story is there. I'm sure it's been released. I haven't read a ton about it, but yeah, that's a great question. I wonder what the hell Melvin Gordon was doing. Interesting. Okay, guys, we talked about early on in the podcast. We have 7 teams in the playoffs this year, so we expanded from 6 to 7. So half the teams are going to make the playoffs. Nick, you and Maine way out in front. Everybody else is kind of in the middle. Besides you and Maine, who do you think is going to surprise us this year with the playoff berth?
Yeah, your team is starting to come around. I'm a big fan of the free running back where you're flexing a running back. I just think points-wise that helps out a lot.
Yep.
So I could see you making a run. You're 2-3 now, but I wouldn't be shocked if you make the playoffs.
I agree. Nick, do you think I'm going to make the playoffs because of my roster, because of how savvy of a fantasy owner I am?
Josh Allen trade was huge. That was savvy. I think you didn't give up much for that. That, to me, it makes your team kind of moved it from no chance. You need a quarterback who's going to put up, a solid 20 points a week at least. With Josh Allen, that was a savvy move in my opinion. I think that gets it done.
Yeah, Nick, I'm not going to say I got lucky, but I was very fortunate that Fournette hasn't been able to stay healthy and that Gibson took over the role he did. It gave me a ton of depth at running back position. I say a ton. I should say some compared to your team. Some depth at the running back position. I had Danny Dimes starting. I had to make a move. I trade with Tom, who wanted a running back. I think a good trade for both of us. Tom, what do you think? Who's going to make the playoffs that's not in it already?
Yeah, first quick comment on the trade. I thought it was a good trade. It was one of those trades that made both of our teams better. We both gained a starter, basically. I hated doing that trade with you because I knew you were a quarterback away from being back in the hunt. Without him, I don't think your team was going to have a very good shot. But this league does not value quarterbacks. And I think you saw the opportunity there. I was desperate, and I advertised that I was desperate, looking for a flex, which I didn't think was that much to ask for. You're the only one that gave me a legitimate offer, so I had to do it.
Yeah, you hit it. Quarterback's super hard to trade for some reason.
The question was fantasy team that will surprise us?
Yeah, give me a fantasy team that's going to surprise us.
I know I talked about Porwall's team last podcast, but I still think Porwall's team is going to surprise us because, like, he's basically been performing pretty well without Devontae Adams and Michael Thomas. And I think both of those guys coming back now, he's going to be really hard to reckon with.
Yeah, I agree. Melvin Gordon obviously hurts him, but Gordon and Gurley have been big surprises for me this year. I thought those guys were well. Both guys I was dead wrong on with my pre-draft analysis. So, yeah, I don't disagree with either of those teams. Obviously, I think Pierce's call is dead on. I'll make the playoffs. But, yeah, good call, Tom. I think Matt's team, if they can stay healthy, should be a playoff contender as well. Okay. What about a team that has a good record? Again, maybe not. Pierce doesn't have to be Maine, but a good team that you think is just going to start plummeting, whether it be because of a recent injury, a bad owner. Who's a team that's just not going to make it? No shot.
So podcast one, I had Jared Saul. Jack, you corrected me. I'll own up to that. He is not in the playoffs currently due to the point format.
Yep.
So I need to change my answer. Brad's team is starting to take a hit. Dak Prescott going down. I just talked about how you picking up Josh Allen makes your team a playoff contender. I think the opposite goes for Brad. He lost his quarterback. He has, I believe it's Ben Roethlisberger, not the same caliber as Dak Prescott. So I think Brad just bad luck with the injury. His road to the playoffs gets a lot tougher.
Yeah, I agree. Dak is an elite fantasy quarterback. Going to be tough to overcome. We'll see what Brad does. Tom, who do you think is going to start the plummet here?
Yeah, I 100% agree with Pierce. It's Brad, in my opinion. I think the Dak injury really hurts that team. He's got a Julio, so I mean, if Julio can find a way to be active every week, I mean, that helps. But I mean, his tight end's Jimmy Graham. I feel like we've seen the best games of Jimmy Graham this season. I think he's going to be hurting that tight end. I mean, he had invested in guys like Mark Ingram. I don't know. I just for being a 3-2 team, I think this team gets worse, not better, as the year goes on.
Yeah, it seems like he has some real depreciating assets instead of guys that get better. Guys, I never root for injuries. Dak Prescott, one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch. I hate to see an elite quarterback back like that go down. So I hate to make this joke on the podcast. Dak, I mean, no harm to you. But Thomas, I want to ask this question to you specifically. Do you think it's a little bit ironic that Brad's team starts to crumble because of an ankle injury?
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that's definitely ironic.
For those of you that don't know, Brad has been unfortunate. His gene pool did not give him stable ankles. And here we are with an ankle injury cratering his season. Nick, do you think about that?
I did not. That's an interesting take. Did not see that one at all. From what I heard when Brad hurt the ankles a few times, he was a little dramatic. I just have to look at Dak. When he goes down, he kind of grabbed his ankle right away. But how calm he was when his ankle is bent in the direction no one wants to see their foot. I was blown away at how tough he looked. Just didn't seem to faze him compared to most guys. Not going to act like that.
Yeah, Dak, dislocated, broken ankle. He sits there like a man. Brad Udarian goes up for a rebound, comes down wrong. He's crying. We got some tears in Brad's eyes. Brad, maybe invest in some braces. Holy cow. Yeah, Dak and Brad, very different injury personalities. Dak, tough as nails. Brad, maybe not. That's okay, buddy. We still love you. Okay, guys. We had a Travis Truller promise to bring a trophy to our league finally after 10 years. Does the trophy give you some inspiration to win this year? Does it add anything to it for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to make it, I think that makes it just even better. I mean, I played another league where we do a trophy league. I fortunately won that trophy last year. It was awesome to carry that thing around. Your buddies are over and bring it out and say, oh, yeah, I have this, not you. But, yeah, I mean, if Truler's going to make it, I think that would, it just puts a lot more, I want that. from my point of view, like I would want the trophy even more if it was like custom made.
Nick, what do you think?
You know, winning allows me to brag just plenty enough. So be a bro, be a douche. If I'm winning, I'm going to do that either way. The trophy is just an added layer. So if I get to invite you guys over to my house and show that trophy off, all the more excitement to take home the championship this year.
I like it. Nick, this question is more geared towards you because you live with your wife, obviously. I live with Carly. I'm a current back-to-back Hudson League champion looking to three-peat this year. I have Thor's hammer in the bedroom on the bookshelf, just looking over me every night as I sleep. Do you think Rachel allows the fantasy trophy, maybe the mantle spot, or where's that thing going to be featured?
I never pretend to where the pants in this relationship. Rachel, she tells me where stuff goes, I'll do it. The one thing I think I maybe would have going for myself is if I win the championship, that means I'm winning $700. If I give her that money to go on a shopping spree, maybe, just maybe, she lets me have that up in the house as a decoration.
I like that. I like that. Buy the mantle space. Love it. Guys, I got a last question. Now we're going to move into the lightning round. Last question. Besides your own team, who wins the fantasy championship in 2020? Tom, you lead us off. Pierce?
You know, like you mentioned, Corwall, his team, if I have to go up against him in the playoffs and he's healthy, that's going to scare me. Devontae with Michael Thomas, if they all come together, that team looks pretty good.
Yeah, give me Nick Pierce as well to join your commissioner as the only two-team Eau Claire League champion. It would be tough to share that crown with somebody, but an honor to do it with Nick if he wins the second title this year. I'd certainly rather have him than Jake Walzak go back-to-back. You know who would be the worst to win? Fucking Schmike. That would be the worst. I think I boot Schmike out of the league this year unless this is this fucking podcast. Guys, lightning round. We're coming into DJs. We can sense the excitement in the car. This is meant to be quick. It's meant to be one-word answers. I'm going to go left to Nick first every time. Nick, who wins Super Bowl this year?
I think you got to take the Chiefs. They won last year. They did nothing to get worse. Now they have Le'Veon Bell, who I think is an added piece. Got to take the Chiefs.
Chiefs, Tom. Give me the Rams. Okay, guys, who is your MVP this season?
It's got to be Russell Wilson. They're letting him cook. You mentioned it earlier.
Mr. Unlimited. Tom, give me Aaron Rodgers. 15-1 Packers season. Okay, who wins Defensive Player of the Year? Pierce.
Aaron Donald is the obvious answer. The guy's just a stud. I'm not voting against him.
Donald, Wrecking Ball. Tom.
Yeah, that was my answer as well.
Yeah, Donald, tough to vote against. Give me Myles Garrett putting together a heck of a campaign in Cleveland. Okay, who is your Rookie of the Year?
It's hard to go against Joe Burrow. I'll go with Burrow.
I think Justin Herbert gets more wins for the Chargers than Burrow does for the Bengals. So give me Justin Herbert.
Herbert, now the odds-on favorite. I'm going to still side with Tom. Give me Burrow as well. Who is your fantasy MVP this year? Pierce.
Give me Delvin Cook. Coming on hot after the injury.
Dalvin Cook, recently traded for.
I'll take the underdog. Let's go James Robinson.
James Robinson, I love the
Let's
call.
hope not.
Give me Alvin Kamara to continue as your RB1. I think he's electric. Who's your biggest fuss? Biggest bust? Tom.
Does Mark Ingram count?
Absolutely.
Okay, I just had a feeling he was going to be bad, and I just think he's slowly getting phased out more and more.
Pierce.
If Julio, he played a couple games and still didn't look great. So if the injury, I think Julio right now.
A couple good calls. Give me the easy button. Lev Bell, he's been injured. I think his role with the Chiefs declines as well. Okay, guys, a couple more. I just want these. These are going to be quick ones. One-word answer. No need to give me a description. Who is better at this point in their NFL career, Aaron Jones or Dalvin Cook?
Delvin Cook.
Give me Aaron Jones. Who is better at this point in their career, DeAndre Hopkins or Michael Thomas?
Michael Thomas.
Give me DeAndre Hopkins. Who is better, Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson?
Russell Wilson.
Give me Rodgers. Kelsey or Kittle?
Kelsey.
I'm going Kittle because he's a phenomenal blocker.
Give me Kittle. Kirk Cousins, Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Cousins barely.
Fitzpatrick.
Give me the Magic as well. Alvin Kamara, Zeke Elliott. Give me Kamara, who is electric. Drew Brees, Tom Brady.
Tom Brady.
Brady.
Yeah, Brady there, our first consensus. AJ Green or Larry Fitzgerald? Baker Mayfield or Joe Burrow?
Joe Burrow.
Burrow.
Yeah, give me Burrow as well. Give me Fitzgerald on the other one too. Okay, guys. That concludes our lightning round, guys. We're at DJ's. Tom, do you want to give just a quick NFL lock of the week? Maybe one or two. Just a quick one before we wrap up today's podcast.
Yeah, sure. So I had, I made a spreadsheet on I think Wednesday or Thursday. Lines have moved a lot. A lot of my quotation mark locks have moved into areas where they're just not attractive bets anymore. One bet that I really like though this week, I really just like the Chiefs. I think they're going to be locked in. I think they're mad about that embarrassing home loss they had against the Raiders. I think we're going to see a very focused Pat Mahomes this week. I think the Bills were a little exposed last week. I think this is a good team that was probably being viewed as a great team, and I think they're just, to me at least, just a playoff team, not really in that elite status. So I think we see the Chiefs definitely beat the Bills this week. So I'd put some big money on the Chiefs.
Tommy's lock of the week, the Chiefs over the Bills. Tom, are you taking the points or are you going money line?
I don't like betting spreads, especially spreads that aren't very attractive numbers. I think it's 4.5. Don't like that spread. So I would just bet them straight up and put more money on it.
Chiefs money line, Tom's lock of the week. My player prop of the week. Give me, I want to go with the common one for you non-sports bettors. Give me Julio Jones over 83 yards. Pierce, you got any bets you like this week?
I'm a non-sports bettor. I'm here at Diamond Joe's. I'm going to listen to Tom and Jack. That's the best thing I can do.
Yeah, listen to Tom. He's been on a real hot streak through 5 weeks.
Best player prop bet, Cam Akers, 37 rush yards this week. It's a home run.
Yeah, we're going to swing big on Cam Akers this week. So cross your fingers. I hope we don't listen to this podcast and sound like a bunch of fucking morons. Okay, boys, let's wrap up the podcast. I want to thank Nick again. This is our second run through the podcast. We all pray to God this film saves. Thanks, Nick, for being so adaptable, coming down to DJs with us degenerates. Tom, you're a normal guest on the podcast now. We'll see you all 16 weeks. This is for Jack, for Nick, for Tom, your two-time Eau Claire League Fantasy Football Champion, signing out. Peace.